All right, let's jump into another deep dive. This time we're exploring a band called Thomas and the Angry Hearts and making some serious waves in folk rock. And, you guys sent us this awesome review of their debut album, and, well, color me intrigued.
It's funny, this review, it's pretty short, but wow, they pack a lot in. Americana, Irish folk, rock.
All the way from Norway.
Exactly. And get this, Ronni Le Tekro, from TNT, he's the one who discovered them.
Yeah, that's a name rock fans will definitely recognize. But how does all that translate to the actual music?
Well, the reviewer is really into how they've captured the energy of their live shows. Like, they describe it as daring, passionate.
So it's not just studio magic. It's got to have that raw feel.
Totally. It's like they bottled that lightning in a bottle energy. And there's this whole emotional range, too. The review talks about love, loss, resilience, hope.
Wow, so they're not afraid to go deep?
Not at all. And the reviewer was really impressed by how they go from those big anthemic moments to these quieter, more introspective ballads.
Yeah, that's a tough balance to strike. It takes real skill to make that work without sounding jarring.
Absolutely.
Well, let's get into some specifics. The reviewer highlights a few tracks, starting with I Will Carry You, which is the opener.
Oh, yeah, I Will Carry You. It sets the tone perfectly, The reviewer mentions this cool blend of warmth and rock. It starts off kind of gentle, acoustic guitar, the male vocalist's voice.
Like they're easing you in.
Right, and then the drums kick in, it starts building momentum.
So it's like a slow burn that catches fire.
Exactly. And the interplay between the male and female vocalists, the reviewer points out how it creates this sense of a shared experience, almost like a conversation through music.
Oh, I love that. It's not just one person telling a story. It's a dialogue back and forth.
Yeah, adds a whole other dimension, doesn't it?
Totally. And the reviewer also raves about the instrumental arrangements, especially the layered guitars.
Yeah, that's where you can hear the attention to detail. It's what takes an album to that next level.
It's like weaving a sonic tapestry. But let's jump to a track with a different vibe now. We are all here. Now, the reviewer makes it sound super infectious.
This is where the energy really explodes. Think bright, vibrant acoustic strumming and driving percussion and this fiddle that'll make you want to get up and dance.
Okay, I'm already tapping my feet.
And then that chorus, all here now. The reviewer says it evokes this feeling of community, togetherness.
So it's an anthem embracing the moment, yeah.
Absolutely. But even with that big anthemic sound, the reviewer mentions that Thomas's lead vocals still have this intimacy to them.
It's that balance again, huh? Big sound, genuine heart.
They seem to have mastered it. Okay, one more before we wrap up this part. It's You. This one was apparently a favorite of the band, and Ronni Le Tekro himself, the producer.
Now that's some high praise.
This one's considered the emotional core of the album, and it's definitely more subtle. It starts with this really intimate acoustic intro, just draws you in.
So starting quiet, drawing you in, and then...
You got it. The reviewer talks about how it gradually builds layers of bass, percussion, strings, guitar. It's like a slow burn, creating this anticipation.
So they're playing with dynamics, tension, and release. What about the lyrics? What's the heart of the song?
It's about the impact we have on each other's lives. How each encounter, big or small, shapes us.
That's pretty profound stuff for a folk rock song.
It is, but it's so universal. I think we can all relate to that idea.
Yeah, for sure. It makes you think about your own journey. Okay, before we get too philosophical,
right,
gotta move on. But we'll pick up right here in part 2 with more on It's You, and then explore that last track the reviewer highlighted. But for now, I'm just amazed by how this band from Norway is already making such an impact.
Yeah, they're definitely ones to watch. Back again, and we were talking about It's You, right? How the instruments just seem to melt into those vocals.
Yeah, that really stuck with me. The reviewer talked about the production creating this feeling of warmth, like a hug.
Right. Almost like you can hear the feeling in the sound.
Exactly.
It's pretty amazing how they do that. The reviewer even mentioned how, the music never overpowers the intimacy of the song. Those vocals, they just get to shine. And speaking of shining, what about those lyrics?
Well, from what the review said, It's You is about how we all affect each other's lives. Like every encounter, no matter how big or small, it changes us.
Deep stuff.
Yeah. Kind of profound for folk rock, wouldn't you say?
It is, but at the same time, it's something we can all relate to, all those relationships shaping who we are.
Makes you think, doesn't it? All right, let's move on to that last track the reviewer mentioned. Get On With Your Life. Seems like a bit of a shift in tone.
Yeah, get on with your life. It's a journey. Starts in contemplation, ends in acceptance. At least that's what the reviewer felt. It begins with this really slow, introspective opening. Evokes a kind of quiet grief.
So a bit more somber than that high energy We Are All Here Now.
Oh, for sure. But just as powerful, the reviewer says. They describe it as this soft, really emotive melody, setting the stage for the male vocalist's voice. Raw, vulnerable,
So it's sad but beautiful.
Exactly, and the instruments, they kind of follow that same path. Starts with this hesitant acoustic guitar, like reflecting that initial hurt, and then it starts building, becoming more intense.
So the music is mirroring that emotional arc. Wow.
It's pretty powerful. The reviewer even used the phrase transition from stillness to momentum, which I thought was really cool. It goes from that raw emotion to something almost uplifting. And of course, those dual vocals are back, blending sorrow and warmth.
I'm seriously impressed with the depth and emotion they managed to pack into their music. It's clear there's a lot of heart there.
Totally. It's more than just catchy tunes, and that's what the reviewer emphasizes, With Thomas and the Angry Hearts, the band has shown they're not just another folk rock group.
They're the real deal.
Yeah. The reviewer was blown away by how they blend those classic influences with something new and modern. It makes for a truly unique experience.
And it sounds like they've made a big fan out of this reviewer. So what were some of the key takeaways? What should our listeners be listening for?
Well, those smooth transitions between the big anthems and the more intimate moments, those are definitely a highlight. Then there's the emotional depth of the vocals, both individually and together. And of course, the way they layer those instruments, that really adds a lot to the whole experience.
It's like they created a world you can get lost in.
Right. So much to discover. And the reviewer even went as far as to say that Thomas and the Angry Hearts are on track to do some really special things.
Wow, that's quite a prediction. But after hearing all of this, it's hard to disagree. It seems like they have everything it takes. Talent, passion, and a sound that's all their own. So for our listeners, what's the big takeaway here? Why should they care?
If you want music that moves you, takes you on an emotional journey, and shows off some incredible musicianship, you gotta check this album out. Thomas and the Angry Hearts, they've created something special, and this review captures that perfectly.
This has been a wild ride. From Norway to Americana, from folk to rock. All thanks to Thomas and the Angry Hearts. And of course, this awesome review.
It's really cool how they pull it all together. You wouldn't think those influences would work, but they just clicked.
Yeah, it's really something special. And this is just their first album. The reviewers convinced they're going to be huge. We even said people need to pay attention, like right now.
And you know what? I think they might be right. Everything we've heard so far points to something big. You've got the chops, the passion, and that certain something you just can't teach.
It's like they burst onto the scene fully formed. But what about that predicament? The reviewer saying they're on the way to achieving something truly special. Is it just hype, or is there something to it?
I gotta say, I think it's more than hype. They've brought something fresh to a genre that can sometimes feel a bit stuck in its ways. That blend of folk and rock, those incredible vocals, the raw emotion, it's a winning combination.
And who knows, maybe they'll spark a whole new wave of folk rock fusion.
Right? Maybe Thomas and the Angry Hearts are leading the charge, bringing that folk, heart, and rock energy to a whole new generation.
That's something to think about, isn't it? Are they changing the game? We'll let you, our listeners, be the judge.
And as always, a big thank you to Dulaxi for sponsoring this deep dive. They make it possible for us to explore these fascinating topics and bring them to you.
Couldn't do it without them. And of course, thanks to you, our listeners, for joining us on this adventure. Until next time, keep those ears open for new sounds and those minds open to new possibilities.